saw her first, a tiny thing with blonde pigtails, completely focused on a dropped ice cream cone. I saw the car second, a dark sedan, speeding, the driver clearly distracted. Time didn't slow down, it fractured. There was no thought, only instinct. I dropped my books, lunged forward, and wrapped my arms around her, yanking us both back onto the curb as the car whipped past, so close I felt the wind of it. We tumbled onto the grass, a heap of limbs and shock. The little girl, wide-eyed and trembling, started to cry. I held her, my own heart hammering against my ribs, whispering, "You're okay, sweetheart, you're safe. What's your name?" "Sarah," she sniffled, clinging to my jacket. I called 911, then stayed with her, holding her hand until the sirens wailed in the distance. They say your life can change in a single moment. For me, that moment was a Tuesday afternoon, the sound of screeching tires, and a little girl's pink backpack. My name is Betty, and I was just a nursing student, running late for my shift when I became a hero. I just didn't know that saving a life would eventually lead me to lose my heart to the one man I should never have fallen for. While waiting for 911, a man came sprinting down the sidewalk, his face a mask of pure, undiluted terror. "Sarah! Oh my God, Sarah!" He dropped to his knees, gathering his daughter into a crushing hug, his entire body shaking with relief. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes, a startling shade of deep blue, were filled with a gratitude so profound it stole my breath. "You," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You saved her. How can I ever thank you?" In that moment, he was just a grateful, devastatingly handsome father. He introduced himself as Matthew. I saw the sharp intelligence in his eyes, the gentle way he comforted his daughter, and felt a pull, a strange, immediate connection. We exchanged numbers at the insistence of the paramedics, and he promised to be in touch to thank me properly. I floated through the rest of my week, the memory of his intense gaze warming me. When he texted, asking if he could take me to dinner to thank me, my heart did a little flip. I said yes. The dinner was magical. He was witty, charming, and so easy to talk to. We spoke about everything: books, travel, our dreams. He asked about my studies. "I'm in my final year of nursing," I said, "but I'm also taking a philosophy elective to round out my credits. Ethics and modern society. It's actually fascinating." Matthew froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. A strange look crossed his face. "Ethics and modern society, with Professor Albright." I blinked. "Yes, how did you know?" He set his fork down carefully, a slow, dawning horror in his eyes. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. "Betty," he said, his voice suddenly formal, strained. "My name isn't just Matthew, it's Professor Matthew Albright." The world tilted. The wine, the soft lighting, the laughter, it all curdled into something cold and forbidden. My professor. The brilliant, somewhat intimidating man whose class I'd sat in for 3 weeks. The man I had a slight academic crush on. The man I was now on a date with. The air between us crackled with a new, dangerous tension. The kind, grateful father was gone, replaced by the professional, ethical boundary he was sworn to uphold. He drove me home in a silence so thick you could carve it. At my door, he didn't even turn off the engine. "I can't see you again, Betty," he said, staring straight ahead. "This was a terrible mistake. It's a conflict of interest. It's against university policy." "But we didn't know," I whispered, my heart cracking. "It doesn't matter. Now we do." His jaw was tight. "I'll see you in class on Monday. Good night, Miss Walker." And just like that, he drove away, leaving me standing in the cold, the taste of what could have been turning to ash in my mouth. The classroom became our battlefield and our sanctuary. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m., I took my usual seat in the third row of Ethics 301, and Professor Matthew Albright performed the most exquisite torture. He was brilliant, commanding, and utterly untouchable. His gaze would sweep across the room, carefully skipping over me as if I were empty air. Yet, in the subtle tightening of his jaw when I answered a question correctly, in the almost imperceptible pause when our eyes accidentally met, I saw the ghost of Matthew, the man from the park, the father who had looked at me with such profound gratitude. The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. By day, I was Miss Walker, student. By night, I was Betty, the girl who saved Sarah, receiving text messages that made my heart flutter. Sarah won't stop talking about you. She asked if you could come to her school play next week. Matthew. I told her I'd ask, as her friend, of course. Me. Of course, just as friends. Matthew. The school play was a disaster of adorable proportions. Sarah was a determined ladybug who kept forgetting her spots. Matthew and I sat side by side in the cramped auditorium, our arms brushing with every shift, every laugh. The air between us was charged with everything we weren't saying. When Sarah took her bow, beaming directly at us, Matthew's hand found mine in the dark. His fingers laced through mine, warm and strong. It lasted only 10 seconds, but it felt like a vow. Afterward, over hot chocolate with a sugar-high Sarah, the facade crumbled completely. I can't do this, Betty, he murmured, his voice low so Sarah wouldn't hear. We were in a bustling family cafe, surrounded by chaos, yet in our own intimate bubble. Seeing you, being this close to you, and having to pretend, it's killing me. What are we supposed to do? I whispered back, my heart hammering. The semester doesn't end for another 7 weeks. His blue eyes darkened with conflict. I don't know, but the rules, they feel so arbitrary now. They're designed to prevent coercion, exploitation. What we have, this connection, it didn't start in my classroom. It started on a street corner when you risked your life for my child. How do I categorize that in my ethics syllabus? The tension reached its breaking point on a stormy Saturday. Sarah was at a friend's house for a sleepover. Matthew had invited me over to his house under the guise of helping him sort through some of his late wife's books for donation. The house was quiet, filled only with the sound of pouring rain and the rustle of pages. We were in his home office, a room that smelled of old books and his clean, masculine cologne. The space was intimate, dominated by a large mahogany desk. This was hers, he said, handing me a worn copy of Wuthering Heights. She loved the tragic romance. I took the book, our fingers brushing. It's a story about all-consuming, destructive love. Exactly, he said, his gaze intense. Love that defies reason, love that is a force of nature. He took a step closer. I've spent my entire adult life in a world of reason, Betty, logic, argument, precedent, and then you are a whirlwind I never saw coming. He backed me gently against the edge of his desk, his hands coming to rest on either side of me, caging me in. There was nowhere to look but into his eyes, which were blazing with a fire I'd only seen glimpses of. Every rule I've ever lived by tells me this is wrong, he whispered, his face inches from mine. His breath fanned my lips. But my heart is screaming that this is the most right thing I've ever felt. Matthew, his name was a plea on my lips. That was all the invitation he needed. He closed the final distance, and his mouth captured mine. It was not a gentle, tentative kiss. It was a conflagration. It was months of pent-up desire, frustration, and forbidden longing erupting at once. His hands moved from the desk to my waist, pulling me flush against him. I could feel the solid strength of his body, the frantic beat of his heart matching my own. My fingers tangled in his soft hair, pulling him closer. The kiss was deep, desperate, and tasting of a truth we could no longer deny. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. The rain lashed against the window panes, a frantic soundtrack to our rebellion. I'm still your professor, he breathed, his forehead resting against mine, his eyes closed in a mixture of ecstasy and agony. I know, I said, my voice shaky. And I don't care, he confessed, and kissed me again, slower this time, a deliberate claiming. That rainy afternoon began our secret life. We became masters of deception. Our relationship was a hidden current running beneath the surface of our public lives. We never went on official dates. Our world existed in the quiet sanctuary of his home after Sarah was asleep, on long, meandering walks in secluded parks, and in 1,000 stolen, heated glances. I learned the man behind the title. The man who was a devoted father, who still grieved his wife in a quiet, dignified way, and who was so brilliantly intelligent it was intimidating and sexy all at once. He, in turn, learned about me, My dreams of being a nurse, my family, my fears. One night, wrapped in his arms on the sofa, he traced the line of my jaw. "When the semester ends," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "The moment you've officially received your grade for my class, this ends. No more hiding. I'm taking you on a real date. I'm introducing you to my colleagues as my girlfriend. I'm done with this secrecy." It was a promise that felt like a lifeline. The countdown began. The day of my final exam arrived. I aced it. I knew I had. I walked out of the lecture hall feeling weightless, free. The barrier was gone. I texted Matthew. "It's done. I'm no longer your student." His reply was instantaneous. "My office, now." I practically floated across campus, my heart singing. This was it, the beginning of our real story. I pushed open his office door, a radiant smile on my face. He was standing by the window, but he didn't turn to greet me with a kiss. His posture was rigid. The atmosphere was cold. "Close the door, Betty," he said, his voice flat. Confused, I did. "Matthew, what's wrong?" He finally turned. His face was pale, his expression grim. In his hand, he held a single sheet of university letterhead. "The dean just called me in," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "A colleague, Professor Evans, he saw us last week. He saw me kiss you goodbye in my car near your apartment." My blood ran cold. Professor Evans was the head of the ethics committee. "This is a formal warning," Matthew continued, holding up the letter. "They are accusing me of a grave breach of professional ethics. My tenure review, which was all but guaranteed, has been suspended." "Matthew, I'm so sorry," I started, tears springing to my eyes. He cut me off, his voice cracking. "That's not all, Betty. They've given me an ultimatum, a choice." He took a shuddering breath. "They're offering me a prestigious 2-year visiting professorship at Cambridge, a golden opportunity. But if I take it, I have to go alone. They've made it explicitly clear that if you follow me or if we are seen together in any capacity before I leave, it will be taken as proof that the relationship was ongoing during the semester. They will not only revoke the offer, but terminate my contract here immediately." The room spun. 2 years alone. "If I don't take it," he said, his eyes full of a pain so deep it terrified me, "my career here is over. My reputation will be ruined. I'll be unhireable at any major university. I have a daughter to think about, Betty, a future to secure for her." He looked at me, the man I loved, utterly broken. "I have to go. I leave in 3 weeks." The future we had just started to believe in shattered into a million pieces at my feet. The 3 weeks that followed were a slow, painful unraveling. We were ghosts to each other, moving through the motions of a goodbye that felt too enormous to comprehend. Our secret, once a source of thrilling intimacy, was now a poison. We couldn't be seen together in public, so our farewell was confined to stolen, desperate moments in his empty house, always shadowed by the ticking clock. The pain was a physical weight on my chest. I saw the same agony reflected in Matthew's eyes. He was being torn in two, the father and professor who had to protect his daughter's future, and the man desperately in love. Sarah was the most heartbreaking part. "Is Betty coming to England with us, Daddy?" she'd ask, her small face hopeful. "No, sweetheart," Matthew would say, his voice thick. "Betty has to stay here and become a wonderful nurse." Her lower lip would tremble, "But I don't want to go without her." Neither did he. I saw it in the way he clung to me at night, as if he could memorize the feel of me through touch alone. 1 week before his departure, I was helping him pack his study. I was sorting through a box of old files when a folded, yellowed newspaper clipping fluttered to the floor. It was an article from 15 years ago. The headline made my blood run cold. "Promising graduate student suspended following relationship with professor." I read it, my hands trembling. The student was a young man. The professor was a powerful, tenured woman. The article detailed a messy, scandalous affair, allegations of favoritism, and the ultimate destruction of the student's academic career. The professor's name was Dr. Eleanor Vance. Scrawled in the margin in a familiar, youthful handwriting was, "Never forget, power is not love." It was Matthew's handwriting. He found me sitting on the floor, the clipping in my hand. His face fell. He didn't get angry. He just sank into his chair, looking older than his years. "I was 22, he began, his voice distant. "She was my thesis advisor. Brilliant, captivating. I thought it was love. It was manipulation. She used her power to control me, and when I tried to end it, she threatened to fail me, to blacklist me. I went to the administration. They didn't believe me. They saw a young man trying to save face. She walked away unscathed. I was suspended for a year. It took me years to rebuild my reputation, to get into another PhD program." He looked at me, his eyes raw. "This rule, Betty, it's not just some abstract ethical principle for me. I lived the nightmare it's designed to prevent. I swore I would never, ever be on the other side of that power dynamic. And now I feel like I've become the very thing I hated." His confession changed everything. It wasn't just about rules or reputation anymore. It was about a deep, personal trauma. His decision to leave wasn't just about saving his career. It was about exorcising his own ghosts. But it also gave me a terrifying clarity. Him leaving felt like a punishment for a crime we didn't commit. Our love wasn't predatory. It was born of circumstance, of a genuine connection that transcended a classroom. The night before his flight, I went to his house for the last time. Sarah was already asleep. We stood in the foyer, surrounded by packed suitcases. "This is goodbye, isn't it?" I whispered, tears finally breaking free. He pulled me into a crushing embrace, his body shaking. "I love you, Betty. God, I love you so much. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do." I looked up at him, my vision blurred. "There has to be another way, Matthew. You're letting them define our story. You're letting your past dictate our future." "What choice do I have?" he asked, his voice broken. I kissed him then, pouring every ounce of my love, my hope, my desperation into it. "Make a new choice." I turned and walked out of his house, and out of his life, my heart shattering with every step. 2 days later, I was a shell of myself, mechanically packing my own apartment to move back in with my parents. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Betty, it's David, Matthew's brother." My heart leapt into my throat. "Is everything okay? Is Matthew?" "He's here. We're at the airport. He's supposed to get on a plane in 2 hours, but he won't. He's just sitting there. He told me everything. Betty, he's destroying himself." I started to cry. Tell him I understand. Tell him to have a good life." "No," David said firmly. "I think you need to tell him that yourself." He put the phone on speaker. I could hear the distant echo of airport announcements. "Matthew," I said, my voice trembling. "Betty," his voice was a ragged whisper. "I can't do it. I got to the gate and I looked at the plane and all I could see was your face. I remembered what you said, about letting them define our story." I held my breath. "I got a call this morning," he continued, a new strength entering his voice. "From the CEO of the city hospital. I'd reached out to him weeks ago as a contingency plan. They've been trying to create a head of ethics position for their research division. He offered me the job. It pays twice what I make now. It has no students, no tenure, just pure applied ethics." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm not getting on the plane." His voice broke with emotion. "I'm choosing us. I'm choosing you. I resigned from the university an hour ago. I'm done living in the shadow of my past. My future is here, with you." I was sobbing, laughing, collapsing onto my floor in a heap of relief. "Where are you?" "Come to the park," he said, his voice filled with more love than I'd ever heard. "The crosswalk, our beginning." I ran like my life depended on it. When I got to the park, he was there, standing at the very spot where I'd saved Sarah. He wasn't holding a suitcase. He was holding a small, velvet box. He didn't say a word. He just dropped to one knee and opened the box. Inside was a simple, breathtaking diamond ring. "Betty Walker," he said, his voice strong and clear, carrying across the space between us. "You saved my daughter. You saved me from a life of fear and regret. You are my whirlwind, my force of nature, my greatest ethical dilemma, and my only moral certainty. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" The world narrowed to his hopeful, loving face. The past, the rules, the scandals, it all fell away. "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, Matthew, 1,000 times, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, stood, and kissed me. A kiss of promise, of freedom, of a future we had chosen for ourselves. We were married 6 months later in that same park. Sarah was our overjoyed flower girl. My former professor, now my husband and the head of medical ethics at one of the top hospitals in the country, held my hands as we vowed to love and cherish each other. We had faced the storm of judgment and chosen to build our own shelter, a family forged not by convention, but by a love that was, from the very start, a rescue.